I was 10 years old, I could have told you exactly who I wanted to be when I grew up. I could have told you everything, from the places I was going to travel, the various jobs I was going to have, and what my fabulous friends were going to be like. I knew from a very young age exactly what my goals were. I knew that I wanted to live in New York or near the Pacific Ocean, even though no one around me had ever been to either place. I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer or have another job with a big fancy office high above the city, even though no one I was close to had a white-collar job or even an office. I knew that I wanted friends from around the world with different backgrounds and amazing stories, even though there was not a person of a different ethnicity inside of my small rural town. I had my life all planned because I watched television. My mother and my sister had both gotten pregnant young, and from that moment on, they devoted their lives to their families. I wanted something other than to be a young mother. I wanted adventure. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted that great job and those great friends. My role models were Mary Tyler Moore, Murphy Brown, Ally McBeal, or even Detective Dana Scully. Strong and independent career women. When my parents got divorced, television became far more than just a place for me to see who I wanted to be. My father moved his new girlfriend in a few months after my mother and I had moved out, and she wasn't very fond of me. The emotional abuse began right away. When my father was gone, she would tell me how worthless I was, and how the house that I had grown up in was now hers and would never be mine again. The physical abuse started later. One example is when she hit me across the head in a restaurant bathroom because I didn't finish all of my food. She told me that if I ever told my father, I would lose him because he would never believe me. When I finally did bring up the courage to tell my dad, he just shrugged it off. He'd made his choice, and it was not me. My mother remarried a year or two after her divorce from my dad. At first, I was excited. I gained 2 new step-siblings, and we got a nice house. I was feeling pretty optimistic. But although he wasn't abusive, my stepfather was not the Mike Brady that I was expecting. He was quick to anger, and I always seemed to be able to spark that in him. He didn't hug, he didn't encourage or compliment, and he rarely even smiled. He made me feel like I didn't belong there. My mother did her best to try and show me how much she loved and supported me, but she could never break through all of the other negativity I was experiencing. Therefore, I now had 2 homes, 2 different families, and I felt unwanted by both. Television had become a place that I would escape to. I would wake up every morning and watch Saved by the Bell. I was convinced that this group of teenagers had the perfect carefree California life. They had good friends to tell their troubles to, and a big, beautiful ocean to hang out at. After school, I would settle in for shows like Growing Pains or Full House, shows with happy families who loved and supported each other no matter what. That was so comforting for me to see. When my cousin and I would play house, she would always marry Uncle Jesse. I would pretend that Danny Tanner was my dad. That was my childhood fantasy. The toll that my home life took on my child brain was immeasurable. And once puberty hit, those goals and dreams I had had for so long seemed ridiculous to me. I was worthless. How was I ever going to accomplish anything? Most of my friends had families like those I watched on television. 2 loving parents at home, parents who were happy, parents who supported them and gave them love and affection. Those were the kids who were going to do great things, and I was obviously not one of them. And so I forgot about ever trying to be like Mary Tyler Moore. My grades slipped, and I started caring more about the validation I could get from boys than working hard. After dropping out of high school and getting my diploma from an alternative school, I did attend college. By this time, I had moved on from Full House to Sex and the City. I would watch this group of single, feisty women living in New York and know that this was now the life I was going to have. I even chose my first college major, journalism, because Carrie Bradshaw wrote a weekly column, and she could afford an amazing New York apartment on that salary. It turns out, however, that college required work, and writing was a little bit harder than it looked like on television. And so after 1 year of below average grades at a community college, I again felt like a failure, and that this wasn't the life for me. And so I left. I started working part-time and devoting the rest of my time to my boyfriend. I still talked about going somewhere like New York, moving to LA, or even backpacking through Europe. But my self-doubt now consumed me. I was ambitionless and just floating through life when on May 19th, 2006, I found out I was pregnant. I was 20 years old, working part-time, and had gotten pregnant by a boy I wasn't even sure would stick around. I had become everything that 10-year-old me was determined to rebel against. And just to let you know how much I was being influenced by television at this time, the first words out of my mouth when I found out were, "They don't let people with kids be on the real world." That's true. Everything I had not done flashed before my eyes. And then one night, through my sobs, I came across another television show that would provide everything I needed at that time: comfort, motivation, and a little bit of self-confidence to think that maybe I could do this. Gilmore Girls is a show about a young single mother raising her teenage daughter. After getting pregnant at 16, the mother leaves her less than ideal family and the only life she knows behind to forge her own path, baby girl in tow. She works her way from a maid to the owner of her own business, goes back to college, and does it all while raising a strong and intelligent daughter and watching a lot of television. This character, Lorelai Gilmore, became my role model and someone I could 100% identify with at this time. I decided right then and there that instead of just watching strong families on TV, it was my turn to provide that for my own child. Instead of just envying strong and independent career women, it was my turn to create that life for myself. And although I had no idea how I was going to make it happen, I made a promise to myself and my unborn baby that we would see the world one day. My daughter was born on December 13th, 2006, and I named her Lorelai. Her name would be a constant motivation, always pushing me to continue to do what was best for us. And I knew that one day I would be watching this life-changing show and character with her. The second that Lorelai and I left the hospital, I set about changing my life. I enrolled in college again, this time to become a paralegal. It was a quick degree that I knew would help me support us as soon as possible. After graduation, I finally fulfilled my dream of moving to the big city, well, Indianapolis, where I worked at a great law firm and had my first real office on the ground floor. We lived in Indy for 2 years, and while I was able to start to rebuild so much of my self-confidence through my career, I decided that maybe those big city dreams were a bit unrealistic, especially when you're raising a 2-year-old and your entire support system is 3 hours away. So we moved to Evansville. It has been 11 years since I found out I was pregnant, and I continue to build a life in this area that I love. I own my own home. Lorelai is thriving in 5th grade. I returned to school for a second degree. I am constructing my own career path. And best of all, I have been able to travel and have many adventures. 2 years ago, I headed to San Francisco for my first real California trip. I was able to see a lot of amazing things, including things that I had seen on Full House, but nothing compared to seeing the Pacific Ocean for the first time. When we rounded the corner and it came into view, I began to sob. I cried because my whole life, that ocean had been a space reserved for characters that I watched with envy and longing. I cried because not only was I seeing the Pacific Ocean, but I was seeing it within the same year that I had seen the Atlantic Ocean. I cried because I had finally gotten myself to a place that I had always wanted to be. Did television give me the life I have now? Did it make me a good mother, put a roof over my head, provide me with career advancement, cause me to see the value in myself, or even do something like audition for this talk? No, I did that. But television showed a young and sad girl the kind of family she wanted for herself one day, and that there was an entire world outside of her small town. Television provided an aimless young woman with strong role models and gave her something to aspire to. Television didn't create my American dream, but it gave me the momentum I needed to create my own. Thank you.